So they put in a monitor so that they could supervise what was actually happening with these particles when they were shooting them through these double slits. And when they put that monitor in, the particles, the photons, started acting again like what we would expect them to act like what they thought the experiment was going to prove. That the photons were particles and they were going to shoot through the slits like a particle would, like a piece of matter, like a bullet, like anything would behave. So when we started paying attention to it directly, watching what the particles were doing, they behaved the way that we thought that they were going to behave in the first place. And then when we remove the monitor, they go back to behaving like a sound wave or water, you know, doing kind of a more ripple pattern.
Hi, we're James and Kara, and this is Kerouacs Cruising.
We are two ordinary people exploring what it means to build a life that feels true, day by day, from one campfire to the next.
This is our adventure, and we're glad you're part of it.
Good morning, friends.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. Last episode, we talked about epigenetics and neuroplasticity and how you can learn and change as you get older. Mm-hmm. Well, today there's new topics.
Well, I want to touch a little bit. So we also talked about, in addition to neuroplasticity and epigenetics, and like James said, that were changeable, but we also talked about how we kind of potentially influence our environment. And there was one experiment that we wanted to encourage you guys to do last episode that we totally forgot to encourage you guys to do. So we wanted to talk about it. Yeah. So we got it from the book E Squared. It's actually one of our most popular episodes we ever did. So we definitely wanted to make sure that we got it in this one. So there's an experiment that you can do. Do you want to describe it?
No, you can.
Okay. Where you take egg cartons and make them basically, you know, plant starters, right? You put some soil in there, peat moss, or whatever you want to do as a foundational start. Get some bean seeds, just because beans are easy to grow. And
everybody can grow beans.
Yeah. And go ahead and plant them, water them, do the whole thing. Now, what's going to be different is one half of that egg carton you're going to give a positive intention to. You're going to love on. You're going to tell them they're beautiful and they're wonderful and they're fantastic. And the other half of the carton, you're going to hate on. You're going to tell them they're terrible, they're ugly, they're not going to grow, you don't want them to grow. Just be very negative to it. And pay attention to them for a couple of weeks, 10 days, whatever, and see which ones grow faster and which ones don't. So that's just something you could try at home to really witness how our thoughts and intentions actually influence the world outside of ourselves. So then we also, that episode touched on the placebo effect, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit further. There are some really interesting studies around the placebo effect, and then the flip side, the nocebo effect, that I don't think people are as conscious of. So with the placebo effect, of course, that is that essentially what they test in clinical trials, for example, is that you give half of a trial an actual pill, a pharmaceutical, and the other half of the trial a sugar pill. The people who are taking the pill have no idea. Sometimes the people who are administering the pill have no idea. And then we judge, based on that, how effective a pharmaceutical actually is, because there is the mental effect that if we think that we are receiving something that is fixing us, our body naturally produces what we need to
fix it,
to do what we think that that pill is going to do. So some studies that have been done outside of clinical trials, there was one done on housekeepers, and they were told that their work is actually considered exercise, physical exercise. And after they were told this, they changed nothing about their daily routines outside of how they thought about their daily routines. And some of their biomarkers started to improve as though they had started an exercise routine. There was another one that involved milkshakes, where same exact typical vanilla milkshake was given to two different groups. One group was told that it was a nutritious meal supplement, and the other one was told that it was a normal milkshake that's, typically bad for you. And the one that was told that it was a healthy nutritional meal replacement, actually saw the way that their body processed the ingredients in that milkshake, treated it as if it was something nutritious, basically. Didn't process it in the typical way. So again, that's how our thoughts affect our body. Sorry, we haven't done a walking episode in a while, and since my butt got squished, I have not been walking as much. So I'm a little breathless and excited about this topic and trying to get through it very quickly to get to the meat and the goodies of this episode. So the flip side of the placebo effect is the nocebo effect, which I don't think people realize as much, which is kind of what we were talking about last week with thinking positively towards yourself and about yourself. So there have been some research that has found that things like when a person's given a prognosis, like you only have 6 months to live because the cancer is going to take over your body, and then the person dies in 6 months, and then they do an autopsy and they look in there and see that the cancer hadn't progressed to that point to knock them out, and but the person believed they only had 6 months to live, so they just embodied that belief, and so their body was like, okay, well, we got 6 months to live, we're on a timeline, and so it just stops working at that point. So that's just as powerful on the flip side. So where we were last week talking about being kind to yourself when you're going through those hard moments, especially when you're trying to change a habit or change a lifestyle, change a way of thinking, be positive and uplifting to yourself, because those negative thoughts can do as much damage as those positive thoughts can do good. So just keep that in mind as we dig into what the meat and goodies of this episode is, which is essentially that change is happening no matter what.
Inevitable.
It's unavoidable, exactly. You got it. We all know the seasons change, the weather changes, the leaves change, our friends change, our work situation change. But these things that more directly affect our life, like our friends getting new friends, our spouse deciding that they want to take up a new hobby, new procedures coming in at work, rearranging the grocery store. I mean, these things that, like, new traffic patterns because of road construction, these things that really irk us and irritate us and really fill us with a lot of frustration, and we spend a lot of time venting about them and being angry about them and irritated about them.
I'm going to give one example here because she's on a roll. I got to slow her down a little bit. So we've been in northern Idaho for a month or so. I don't really know how long I've been here, but it's been a while. And the talk of the town, everybody talks about it, is the smoke from the wildfires. And that's just one of those things that probably happens every year at some point here. But when it happens, everybody gets so frustrated in the smoke, which we have really little control over it.
Yeah.
And we should be embracing it and saying, well, it's good for the trees, it's good for the environment. The wildfires do produce better growing soil, and there's just so many other things. Yeah. But instead, we focus on
the negative. Yeah, no, exactly, 100%. You're exactly right. And there's so many things like that in our lives that are outside of our control. And we spend so much of our life trying to control the circumstances around us to make them go the way we want them to go. And then we get super frustrated when things don't work out the way that we wanted to. We're so attached to how hard we've been working to get this desired outcome that we refuse to just fall into what's inevitable, unfortunately. Now, some of the things I want to touch on that is how crazy science is, and that I just don't feel like it's been fully embraced by the populace, because the realization that everything isn't what we were taught in school makes it so hard to wrap our brain around. And again, it's change that's uncomfortable, and the implications and the possibilities are kind of mind-blowing. And that's where a lot of people, I think, shut down, is when you say quantum physics. They're like, that's too difficult. I can't understand that. That's crazy. And it is crazy. And I feel like when you are open to quantum physics, when you're open to weirdness, when you're open to things not being exactly as we expect them to be, it gets a little bit easier to wrap your brain around, because the most beautiful thing about quantum physics is that it is so unpredictable, and it is so anti what we expect the world to be. And what they're finding is that things, the way this universe works at the very smallest levels that we can measure at this point, and the largest measures that we can witness at this point, work very much the same. So it leads you to think that there's a possibility, that's where we're drawing lines, there's the possibility that everything in between also would work the same way. We just all expect it to work a certain way, the Newtonian or the classical physics way. So I'm going to kind of, I guess, just jump into it. So the biggest thing that points to that, in my opinion, which was the most mind-blowing experiment, and I think it was one of the first quantum experiments, at least one of the first famous ones, was the Double-Slit experiment. And that was, they took photons, and we talked about photons last episodes. These are light particles. Light looks like it's a solid beam, essentially, but it is teeny tiny little, beyond microscopic particles, just like sand on a beach. A beach is a whole thing, but it's made up of these teeny tiny little particles of sand. So they took photons and they shot them into two slits in a board, essentially, and obviously this is all at the smallest level of us being able to do anything. And what they expected, of course, because like I just said, photons are particles of light, they expected them to act like particles. Like if you're shooting an object between two slits, there's a specific pattern that it would make. Well, when they went and analyzed the pattern afterwards, that pattern, it was actually more like a wave, which is more like a liquid or more like sound. And so it, of course, was very confusing to them. So they put in a monitor so that they could supervise what was actually happening with these particles when they were shooting them through these double slits. And when they put that monitor in, the particles, the photons, started acting again like what we would expect them to act like what they thought the experiment was going to prove, that the photons were particles and they were going to shoot through the slits like a particle would, like a piece of matter, like a bullet, like anything would behave. So when we started paying attention to it directly, watching what the particles were doing, they behaved the way that we thought that they were going to behave in the first place. And then when we remove the monitor, they go back to behaving like a sound wave or water, doing kind of a more ripple pattern. So that alone is mind-blowing to me. That's where I was like, whoa, the world is not quite what we think. Because even though there wasn't a human directly in there, that was a human implanted device with an intention behind it on what we were expecting the outcome was going to be. So that leaves breathing room for a lot of potential on possibility. Just feels magical to me. The other one is Entanglement. And this one is, they took, I think it was also, maybe it was a proton. I think they took a proton and they split it into two equal and exact protons. And they shot one proton off in one direction 7 miles away and shot the other proton off the opposite direction 7 miles away. So these two protons are 14 miles away from each other.
And them numbers may not be exact.
I think they might be, but it doesn't matter. The object of it is the same. And so they go to one proton and they excite it, and the other proton immediately, with no time in between, behaves as though it has been excited as well. both of them are acting the same way, even though only one of them is being interacted with. So that brings up the theory that once connected, it's never unconnected. So two things that have been entangled with one another at some point remain entangled with one another indefinitely.
And I'm going to give an example of that is twins.
Mm-hmm.
So twins have a better chance of, believe it or not, telepathy and all these things, because they can be, and I'm just going to give you another example. One twin could live in Alaska and the other one could live in Florida, and just thinking about the other one could spark a phone call from the other one as they get older, because they're entangled. Their brains are on the same wavelength. I mean, I don't even know if that's the right word, but and I do it with my brothers and sisters. It doesn't work all the time, but it does work. Think about really deeply about having a friend call you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about it, and you think about it long enough and positively enough, most of the time that person ends up reaching out in some way, shape, or form.
And that's actually another experiment from the E-squared book, actually. Is
that's right, too.
To spend some time really deeply thinking about somebody and sending them love and all the good feelings, and see if they reach out to you in some form or way in the next 48 hours or something like that.
So, but twins really, over the years, have shown that they are entangled.
Yeah. And then you take that to a deeper, more profound level of possibility, is that everything, as far as science theory believes today, and of course we're talking about change in this episode, so that could change, but what science theory believes today is that everything came from the Big Bang. Everything came from one source, exploded out, and that created matter, and everything has been doing its thing for, billions of years since then. So if everything at one point was one source, then everything is still entangled with one another, right? When you kind of draw those lines and connect those dots. So again, that's our stretch into possibility and potential there. Okay, so we go from this double-slit experiment, entanglement, and quantum theory can go so much deeper into that. That we just don't have the time for that here. But one of the biggest things in science is, once upon a time, we believed that the atom was the smallest piece of matter. Really, once upon a time, we thought cells were it, and then we thought that it was molecules, and then, it's come all the way down to atoms, and then, of course, atoms have protons and electrons and a nucleus and all of that. But then what we've really found with an atom is that it is, according to science today, 99.9999, I don't even know how many nines, % nothing. So it is literally like 0.000001 of something. And that something is the nucleus and the electrons and the protons that circle around it. And an analogy I had heard was that if the nucleus was a VW bug, then the electrons would be the size of a pea. And then there was, I can't remember, but it was going to be like the size of a state would be the VW bug was in it, and the protons, electrons, whatever, doing their things around the nucleus would be like around this entire state. And it was a pretty big mess to just kind of give scale. But with that thought, our atoms being mostly nothing, just like we're mostly water as a living being, inside of that mostly water and that little bit of cell tissue and all of that in between is nothing. There's almost nothing that makes us up. Now, the universe is proven, and it's one of the core principles that Nikola Tesla operated on. His one quote, if you want to understand everything, you want to understand frequency and vibration, something to that effect. So it's long been known that the planet, the Earth, all of that is all energy. And the universe, it's all energy, it's all vibration, and it's such a dense vibration. And the way that our senses have developed, we perceive it all as solid objects. Now, with that, that's me going off on a tangent, so I'm just gonna set that there. You can chew on it. Look it up, it's super interesting. But right now, like I said, what we know is that the atom is 99.99999% nothing. But that is based on what we can measure today. So there's a potential out there that we're going to be able to measure something even smaller than the atom and find that it fills that space. And we don't know what it is. For a long time, they were calling, and they still do, the universe is mostly dark matter. And what dark matter is they don't know. They don't know what it is. They don't have the instruments or the knowledge to figure out what they're measuring or what's there. So that's what dark matter is. It's not that it's just darkness, it's that they don't know what it is. So that's the open-mindedness to how things are changing. Like, the beautiful thing about science is that science was never meant to be an end-all be-all at any point. Just like today, we feel like we know everything there is to know, and we interact with our world super efficiently and have created this amazing technology that can do all these things for us. And I mean, we've seen, and in my lifetime, I can't even imagine, somebody who's 80, 90 years old, the things that they've seen. It gone from analog phones, corded phones, to caller ID and cordless phones, to cell phones, or pagers, I guess, in between there. Internet, being the dial-up scream at you while you're trying to sign on, to it being available to the cell phone that lives in your pocket and is more powerful than the computers they use to launch people into space and land on the moon. Like, it's just really incredible at what we've been able to do with technology. So it's hard to not feel like we're at the epitome of technology, right? But it is always changing. And as we learn more in science, our mindsets need to change around what we are learning. And I think at some point, it seems like in the last, 40 years, it feels like we've stopped changing the way we look at our world and interacting our world based on what the new science is finding. We kept updating our program systems, and we've stopped doing that. We've got more information available at our fingertips than we've ever had, but we're all just so stuck in our ways that we refuse to open our minds up to the potential that science is really proving exists.
And I just want to jump in a little bit. Think about when you went to school and what you were being taught, and then go to school today. They're kind of teaching the same things. Yeah. Society isn't moving with technology, and it sure isn't moving with the science-based knowledge that the universe is really providing.
Yeah, absolutely. Another example is, we were all taught that civilization essentially started to begin like 5,000 years ago. And recently they have found, I can never say, it's Göbekli Tepe or something like that. I'll put it in the show notes. But there's a new civilization that they found. It looks like it's, they don't know a whole lot about it yet. There's still not a whole lot out there about it. But it looks like a developed civilization from 12,000 years ago.
More advanced, or as advanced as we are today.
Potentially, yeah, the potential's there. Yeah, we don't know. But the potential, things have been found in some of these older civilizations, beyond ancient Egypt, that are things like plumbing seem to be in the walls. So it's...
What about they even found a computer chip?
Yeah, there's a computer chip that's embedded in rock. What do they call it? It's part of a whole designation of things that are unexplainable. What is it called?
I'm trying to think.
Anomaly?
Yeah, it is anomalies.
It's
unexplained anomalies.
But it's a whole region of the geological and archaeological world where they have found things that are embedded in rock, for example, where it had to have been there when that rock layer formed, but doesn't make any sense for how all of our timelines and everything else.
They even got the Sphinx, right?
Yeah.
That they have proven now that was at least 8,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And they're saying we've only been here for 5,000 years.
Not that we've only been here,
No,
but as civilizations, being outside of hunter-gatherers. So it's just interesting because, again, if we would open up our mind and start embracing what all of these different clues potentially are showing us in all of these different directions, we can begin to shift the paradigm and start to think differently and start to embrace the changes that means for our history books and our foundation for what we believe science and society and all of these different things are, and start to open our minds and actually be able to learn even more outside of trying to look at everything through a closed-minded box. I mean, I don't want to get up on a soapbox, but one of my biggest things when we, like, archaeologically go back and look at ancient civilizations or tribes or whatever it is, when we're digging up dirt and we're finding all these little bits and pieces of their lives and their story, and we're plugging it all together based on the lens that we're looking at it from where we sit, based on our life experiences, based on the things that we've witnessed in our lifetime, based on the things that we know concrete has happened in human history. We're not looking at it from a broader perspective of all of the potentials of what this storyline could be. We're just placing it together where we think it makes sense, where it fills our gaps in our stories. And if it doesn't fill those gaps, we put it aside and call it an anomaly and leave it be. And I think that that's what we do with a lot of things in the world, in our own personal lives, outside of the bigger picture of archaeology, of quantum physics, of science in general. When we're looking at our day-to-day life, we file everything away into good, bad, or otherwise. I want this, I don't want this. This makes my life hard, this doesn't make my life hard. This isn't what I'm working for, this is what I'm working for. And so we buck against or fight against all of the other things that don't seem to be going with the direction that we are set on going, instead of just relaxing into it and going with the flow and trusting the process. We'll talk about that more next episode, but the biggest thing here we want you to kind of wrap your brain around and understand, and what we're really trying to say is that the nature of life in general, from the universe down to the smallest, atoms, is that change is inevitable. It's going to happen. And what makes change so difficult is us fighting against that change. If we can learn to embrace the change for what it is, knowing that it's part of life, it isn't a failure as an adult, it isn't that we messed up in some big way, it isn't that everybody's out to get us, it's that change is going to happen no matter what. And so to stop fighting against it is to start saving a lot of your energy to be able to start putting it towards things like growth, and to start having the resilience to get through those challenging times or those difficult times, which ultimately, in a lot of cases, can lead to growth. So what else you got to add to that?
And what I am trying to do personally, as far as change goes, and I've always had a difficult time with it, I've been really just trying to relax into it and let the change happen and not force myself either way. Because one of the biggest things that I'm really trying to do is let my intuition take over and try to figure out through change what I'm supposed to be doing in my life. Yeah, I love doing the podcast. I love traveling, but what am I supposed to be doing? So I'm trying to just, maybe it is the podcast. I don't really know, but I'm trying to just relax into it and let the world come to me not chasing the world.
And I love that, because that speaks to what we're actually going through. So we're coming at you with this episode in a time in our life where things are very uncertain. And not super uncertain. Like, I feel like we generally know that you want to get out of the sun? Yeah. That we want to travel and visit people that we love and care about and do those things. But the how is not
The how's not for now.
Yeah, the how has not fully made its way to our fingertips yet. And
So, you know, we alike, we have the craziest ups and downs in our life. So for a while, we're like, oh, things are going great, everything's perfect. And then we have roadblocks. And then things will happen. And then we try to embrace them. But then all of a sudden, our direction is going to change now. Because now we have to go a different direction. So it's trying to embrace the change and know that sometimes the change was supposed to happen so you could grow into the person you're meant to become.
yeah, and I think the difficulty in change comes with being so attached to the outcome that the change is pushing you away from. And I think that's where the difficulty comes in. And so it's letting go of that attachment, I think, is what we have had learned that we have had to do. So in all of that, where...
I don't know, when you try to force it, it usually does not work.
No, it doesn't. It just breeds more frustration, more anger, more disappointment,
Stress
more
and
anger.
anxiety.
Yeah, all of these negative, all of these negative feeling emotions that bring you down and add a lot of mental headache and heartache to your, not only yourself mentally, but your body, and the environment around you, how you're influencing your environment. So that's kind of the full picture of, I guess, what our mindset's side of things, is that how you fall into the tough moments really affect the outcome of those tough moments, right? Because that negative mindset can affect more than just how you're thinking and feeling. But I mean, science is proving that stress really pays a large toll on our bodily health. And so, I mean, just those little things and it's so hard. It's so hard. And by the time we get to this little series, we're going to give you guys some more tips and tricks on things that you can do. And of course, you know, one of the things I want to encourage you to do, not only the experiments that we talked about at the beginning of this episode, but also to think about the things that you are really having a lot of difficulty with right now, things that you are really resisting right now. What change are you resisting in your life? And how can you begin to relax into it? How can you begin to just allow it to happen? Now, we know that this is hard to live every day of your life. It's something that I'm very fortunate that I have James to help me. You know, he's been a great cheerleader for me, been a great reminder. I feel like we both get each other at each other's weak moments. The other one is strong, and we're able to be like, yeah, we got this. We're going to be fine, you know, when the other one's spiraling. And so we're able to pull each other out, but you don't always have that in your world. And so what we are building with the Reinvention project is we take what we talk about here in the show, what we're living in our real life,
What we're learning, and we bring it to you and help you in your life. So if you are interested in that, the link's in the show notes. There's a free class every month where you can jump in and witness the kind of teaching and training and mindset work that we're doing live. We meet every Thursday, but once a month, the third Thursday of the month, we invite people to join us. And so if you're interested in that, that's the first step. Otherwise, you can book a consultation call or a one-on-one call to see if it's a right fit for you. If you're interested, you have any deeper questions. But it's really a support network.
It's a support. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. It's accountability, partners, support, and putting some people in your circle who think, believe, and act the way that you want to. And so you can start to embody that in yourself, because it's really hard when you're the only one in your life who is at that moment, but you know this is right for you. So if that's for you, links should be wherever you're listening or watching. What else you got, my love?
That's it. Life's always changing.
Life's always changing.
And it's good to try new things.
We love you guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye.
Bye.